Ideas have consequences. So this conviction of faith results in a moral imperative. As I used to wonder aloud to those whom I had just confirmed at the end of the worn-out homily that had begun with the story of the young woman in Toronto, as did this talk, if we really believe that we are temples of the Holy Spirit, that we are vessels of the divine and icons of the Trinity, that when God the Father looks at us, he sees the face of his Son, Jesus. Can you imagine how differently we treat ourselves and other people? That's morality, is it not? As Pope Benedict XVI recently remarked during his apostolic visit to his beloved homeland, this is the transition from the is to the ought, from the is to the ought, upon which our moral decisions and actions need to be grounded. If we are divinized, if we are reflections of God, created in his image and likeness, there's the is, then we ought to treat ourselves and others only with respect, love, honor, and care. If, for instance, the preborn baby in the womb, from the earliest moments of his or her conception, is a human person, and that's an is that comes, by the way, not from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, but from the biology textbook used by any sophomore in any high school, then that baby's life ought to be cherished and protected. If an immigrant from Mexico is a child of God, worth the price of the life of God's only begotten Son, then we ought to render him or her honor and a welcome, not a roar of hate, clenched fists and gritted teeth in response to the latest campaign slogan from a candidate appealing to the nativistic side of our nature. If even a man on death row has a soul, is a human person, and is that cannot be erased even by beastly crimes he may have committed, then we ought not strap him to a gurney and inject him with poison. From the is to the ought, that's the moral journey, see? A further corollary of this is that our identity is a given, okay? Our identity is a given. We are a child of God. We are his creation, modeled in his own image and likeness, destined for eternity. That is a given. That is an objective reality. That's our identity. We are not, then, identified with our urges, our flaws, our status, our possessions, our utility. Blessed Pope John Paul II taught in Pastoris Dabo Vobis that perhaps the greatest heresy today is that we tend to stress having and doing over being. Listen to that again. Only a philosopher could say that. The great heresy today is that we stress having and doing more than being. My identity, my personhood, my isness, and the respect that such an isness ought to engender does not depend on whether or not I have a green card, a stock portfolio, a job, a home, or even, pardon me, a college diploma. Nor does my identity depend upon to whom I might be sexually attracted to, or to race, religion, gender, social status, bank account, passport, or health insurance, but on my essence as a child of God. So, for instance, to the recovering alcoholic crying in the confessional at St. Patrick's Cathedral after a 2-day binge in Manhattan, I am nothing but a hopeless drunk, we reply, no, you are a child of God, made in his image and likeness, loved passionately and personally by a God who claims you as his own, but who happens to have an addiction to alcohol. So to the picketer outside St. Patrick's Cathedral, who, protesting the church's defense of traditional marriage, yells at me, "I am gay. Why do you hate me? I am gay." We respond, "Nice to meet you. As a matter of fact, I don't hate you. I love you. You are God's work of art, the apple of his eye, embraced by a God who passionately loves you, who just so happens to have a same-sex attraction. Because who we are is of infinitely more significance than what we have, do, drink, or might be sexually attracted to." As he is wont to do, Pope Benedict XVI recently gave a fresh twist to this approach to morality. Again in Germany, before the Parliament, the Holy Father spoke about the need to reverence both the external environment of creation and the internal ecology of the creature. Thank God, the pontiff remarked, we creatures have learned, albeit the hard way, that the environment of our earth has a built-in balance, a fragile structure and equilibrium. Creation, the pontiff says, has an ardor about it, a delicate stasis that should never be tampered with or polluted. We all seem to recognize that now. However, and listen to this, the Green Pope, as Benedict has been called, went on to remind us as well that just as there is an integrity in creation that must be safeguarded, and a law of nature that is evident to us who are tempted to abuse it, so there is an ardor, a balance, a coherence innate in creatures, in the human person, that is protected by a natural law which must be heeded and is only disregarded at the peril of the species. Listen to what he said before the Parliament. The importance of ecology is no longer disputed. We must listen to the language of nature and must answer accordingly. Yet I'd like to underline a point that seems to me to be so often neglected. There's also an ecology in man and women. Man, too, has a nature that he must respect and that he cannot manipulate at will. Man is not merely self-creating freedom. Men and women do not create themselves. Their will is rightly ardored if they respect their nature, listen to it, and accept themselves for who they are.